Hello, welcome everybody. We'll get started in just a few minutes. Buddy, how's it going? Oh, dang, I can't hear. Buddy, let's see. There we go. How about that? No. Can folks hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, there we go. Perfect.
I can hear you.
Adrian, how's it going?
Doing good. How about yourself?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Not too bad. Buddy, how are you?
I'm doing great. How's everybody?
Not too bad. Not too
Good,
bad.
good.
Are you in a new room, buddy?
No, this is my bedroom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I feel like I usually
Yeah.
see it on a different angle.
And well, normally I have a photo, but I haven't put that photo back. I changed some things up and I haven't put the photo back. So I'll put it back at some point in time.
Zach, how's it going?
Pretty good. How are you all?
Yeah, doing great, Zach.
Not too bad.
Okay, what am I doing here? Let's see. What am I doing? Trying to do something here.
I think that this meeting will be lightly attended. That's okay, because I think we have no guests today. Fortunately, we had the mayor has a task force on automated traffic enforcement cameras. And we had invited them and they had initially confirmed, but unfortunately they were not able to join. They just sent me an email, I think yesterday, but they will be back. They will be back next month for July's meeting.
Okay.
So I think we can go ahead and get started, actually.
Yep. Okay.
Because it is now 5:31. So maybe we can do. Actually, I think everyone knows each other. So we could probably just go ahead and jump in.
Okay.
Bushira's on, but she won't be able to actually engage until 6 o'clock. So yeah, I actually wanted to run by some website stuff with her as well. So, but we can come to that when we get there. Let me just give Helen a quick call and just see if I can get her on.
Okay.
202-6. Okay.
Hello, this is Helen at 202-686-0522. I cannot come to the phone now. Please leave a message if you can.
Hi, Helen. It is Karthik and Buddy. We are in the MAAC meeting. Would love for you to join if you can. If you can give me a call back, that would be great. I will talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye. Okay. Well, I think we can go ahead and get started.
Okay.
So
Yep.
we usually start with intros, but I think everyone knows each other, so we can probably just jump right in. The thing that I wanted to do today is actually start we started out a few months ago kind of listing out the big things that we want to accomplish, or what are the things that we really care about from an accessibility perspective. What are the main things that we'd like to see the district make progress on? And I'm a information systems professor, so like data is my thing. And one of the things that's kind of best practice in the strategy world is let's come up with specific metrics that we can actually focus on that measure the things that we care about. So for example, one of the things that we care about are audible walk signals. We want more audible walk signals throughout the district. So the question is, okay, what if we start tracking that metric of, okay, let's say there are, I'm making this up, 7,000 intersections in the district. The metric that we want to track is what percent of those 7,000 intersections have an audible walk signal. So, and ideally, we can actually say, okay, we began 2023 with 5% of all of our 7,000 intersections having an audible walk signal. But and we can communicate that to DDOT and say, hey, this is a number that we really care about because this affects us. We would like to see 10% by the end of 2023. And at the very least, it's just a number that we start watching of like, okay, it was 5% in January, now it's 8% in July or June, and maybe it's 9% in December. It's just something that we can watch and we can put on our website and say, hey, this is something that we're like, this is a metric that we really care about. And we can come up with a bunch of these metrics. But one thing that I was thinking about was, hey, what if we just start to brainstorm the metrics that we've talked about the things that we really care about. Maybe we can start brainstorming the metrics that we really care about. So how do we measure the things that we care about? So for example, like we care about audible walk signals. One good measure might be the percent of signalized intersections without an audible walk signal. And this is basically another way to think about this is that this is a measure of the inequity in the district. So, folks with a disability, we want this inequity metric to go down. We want the district to become more equal and more fair. And in order to do that, we can have maybe 90. Let's say that inequity metric of 99% of intersections don't have an audible walk signal. Maybe we want that number to come down. So that's another framing. We can frame it either as a equity metric, which is low and we want it to get higher, or an inequity metric, which is high and we want it to come lower. So those are that was one I have some other ideas of other metrics of things that we care about, but I wanted to just kind of kick off a discussion like that about, hey, these are things that we care about. What are the, how can we measure them? So yeah, I just wanted to get kind of general thoughts from Buddy and Adrian. Kind of, what do you think about this approach?
Well, let me first of all say thank you, Karthik, for bringing up this subject. As you know, it's sort of dear to my heart because of my poor vision, and my vision is getting worse, which means that at some point in time, I will be very dependent upon verbal communication opposed to visual communication. And also, as you know, we have a audible signal installed at the intersection of Wisconsin Avenue and Albemarle. And that's a very busy intersection. And what I found is that people are really paying attention to those audible signals. At first, I wasn't sure whether people were going to actually follow them or continue to jaywalk. But I've been sort of monitoring it, and it appears as though people are really paying attention to it. Now, unfortunately, some people don't use it. They just stand there and wait for the light to change, which is okay. But what I'm also finding is that young people are beginning to appreciate those audible signals. That the reason I was pushing for it in my neighborhood is that I live in a building of 180 seniors, and we travel from my building up to that intersection quite often to go to Target, to go to CVS, to go to some of the
library.
Library. So, but what I'm finding is that people are actually paying attention to that audible signal, not just the older folks like I am. So I think that no matter where you put those audible signals, it will be worthwhile. And I think that people will, in fact, appreciate having those signals at various intersections throughout the city.
Yeah, and I think an achievable goal is to get those audible walk signals in a lot more places. And that's where we can kind of start to measure. In the dream scenario, we could get every signal in the district to have an audible walk signal. And so basically, one thing that there's a concept called baselining of like just understanding where you are. If you have like a very ambitious goal, understanding where you are starting with, like, are we at 1%? Are we at 5%? Or are we at 10%? Who knows? And that's where it's just like, if we can just start tracking numbers like that, I think that would be very helpful in kind of helping us determine, okay, well, like, this is something that we really care about. So we're going to continue to bring up this metric of, hey, we really want to see more audible walk signals. We would like it. We would like to see, let's say we're at 8% now. We would like to see us at 15% next year or something like that.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I was like, basically, the only metrics that I could see is seeing the numbers and how, where they are and how many there are at each intersection. I can't really think of any other way to show the progress outside of just where how many are actually have that feature. I mean, I guess another thing you could also try to do is like, maybe start off with like the major sections of major areas, like the major streets, and then kind of work your way down to the less. All the streets are important, but I guess like the less populated areas. So like start off with like major streets and major intersections, then kind of work your way down, I guess, so to speak. That might be another way to do it.
Yeah. I think DDOT calls it the functional classification of roads. So the biggest ones I think are called principal arterials. So basically the principal arterial roads where there are the biggest volumes of cars are often the ones that are the most dangerous. So I think that's or the biggest roads with tons of lanes. Those are the ones that we especially want to focus on. So maybe it's percent of signalized intersections that start off with principal arterials and then kind of work its way to, I think I can actually pull up the breakdown. I think it goes from principal arterial to minor arterial to, I think it's called Collector, and then to Neighborhood Street or something like that. But yeah, I think a prioritization framework, I think, would be really useful here.
The other thing I'm realizing, Karthik, is that drivers are also paying attention to those audible signals. What I mean by that is drivers who are distracted and really not paying attention to
Yep.
Pedestrians as they begin to cross, even if they have the walk signal.
Yep.
Well, if drivers can hear that, you are now, the walk signal is on, you are now free to walk across, then that will wake some drivers up who may not be paying attention visibly.
Great point. Totally. Absolutely. So this is something that could help both both drivers and pedestrians, but especially folks with visual disabilities.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Nice. So we can. So I will put that down. What I'll do is so we can the kind of the process that I was thinking about was we can kind of go through these and brainstorm these metrics together. I can share the rest of my list, and then maybe we can comment on those, and then if Buddy and Adrian, I would love to get your feedback on additional metrics that you think are important.
Okay.
Okay.
And then what I was thinking was, okay, we compile all of these together. We'll send them to DDOT. Zach and Nana have already given some feedback on just when I was brainstorming my list. But then what I can do is, I'll send them the refined list of the ones that I came up with, but then also the ideas that you have, and then hopefully in July we can have a more detailed discussion with DDOT about, okay, how can we get started with collecting this data and presenting this data.
Yeah, great.
Cool. So the first one that I had was, so the audible walk signals. The next one that I had was the number of streets without sidewalks. And that's kind of broken down by, and this could be number of streets, or it could be the number of street miles, or kind of linear feet of street that don't have sidewalks. And again, I think this could be similar to, hey, it's a lot worse when we've got major roads that don't have sidewalks versus like neighborhood roads. But still, we want sidewalks everywhere, but we can kind of start off with the prioritization framework.
Well, I'm not too familiar with streets that do not have sidewalks. Can you sort of point out a couple of streets that do not have sidewalks?
Yeah, they're luckily most of our major streets do have sidewalks. But quite a few of our neighborhood streets, especially like as you get further away from metro stations, don't have sidewalks. And that kind of spans all of, like, when you get deep into the residential areas, like away from like heavy corridors. So that's where, and unfortunately, and this is why I think is kind of a big deal of like, hey, not everyone. We would love for people to be able to live near transit and buses, but I feel so bad for the folks that have a disability who don't own a car, but they have to go either to work at or they're visiting a friend who lives in a neighborhood that doesn't have a sidewalk. What are they going to do? Like, and they're just like literally like if they're in a wheelchair, they're rolling on the street itself, and that's like really dangerous. So that's why I think it's kind of a big deal to just start tracking this metric.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like it's very important, but I haven't encountered any streets personally that don't have sidewalks. But if it is, I think that, like you said, it's important, particularly when people have accessibility issues. I've never used a wheelchair, but I imagine it's difficult if you're like trying to get it through grass or uneven terrain or things of that nature. So at least I guess with them, like you said, in most of your major places, it's not an issue. It's more so like
Mhm.
just sort of pinpointing the small areas to make sure that they get access to pavement and streets and things of that nature.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Mhm.
I know, Adrian, one of the things that you brought up a bunch is scooters on the sidewalk. And we could have at least one metric on looking at that. I guess there are two things here is like scooters operating on the sidewalk and scooters parked on the sidewalk. And I think we can probably come up with one, a metric on both. Is that still something that you want to drill into, Adrian?
Oh, sure, man. I mean, I might have to think about the metrics. I mean, because I mainly, yeah, I mean, I guess it would be kind of hard to, pinpoint that. Particularly, like you said, I remember we had talked before, a lot of them are unregistered. So, like the ones that I really see a lot of that go real fast are the black ones. That they don't have like I think you said, they don't have like a stop to keep them from going a certain speed. They just kind of go.
Just go, yeah.
The white and green ones, they don't really go that fast. I mean, they go fast enough. Like if you might have some issues, you
Right.
could get hurt. But the black ones are like zooming a lot.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, and of course those scooters, they come at you sometime out of the blue. You just don't know when they're coming.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's
so,
right. And they don't have. I mean, they have little bells, but most of the time people don't use them. They just think that you. They think
Mhm.
that you just automatically notice they're coming behind you, and they go.
Yeah.
It's not like they're loud like a car or something like.
That's
They
right.
almost
Yeah.
sound like a low level vacuum cleaner or something like.
Hmm.
They don't make much noise.
Hmm.
yeah. Um, I think so. I don't know. Scooters operating on the sidewalk. I don't know what a good metric might be here, but I can think of I think a decent metric on scooters parked on the sidewalk. And we can get, I think we had one DDOT person come in and said that scooter corrals, so getting them off the sidewalk and into scooter corrals might be might be something good to help help that process. But I don't, is that like, do you think that that kind of is important enough to bring up?
I think the number of, hi, this is Zach. I think the number of scooter corrals and bike corrals could be a good metric. I think scooters maybe parked illegally
Yep. Yep.
may be something that we could track too.
Yep. Numbers of scooters parked illegally. Yep. Totally.
Hmm.
The, yeah, and I wonder, yeah, and then similarly, number of scooters, scooter corrals, or maybe we can say scooter and bike corrals installed. One thing that Aaron, I think his name was Aaron Goldbeck, he brought up at the, when he was he's the scooter guy, or the shared mobility fleet, I think. This what manager, I think, is that, but that's what it's called. That's what he's called. He mentioned that you could use those scooter and bike corrals as what are called daylighting infrastructure. So basically, that if you place those scooter corrals near intersections, that gives more visibility to drivers so that pedestrians are safer, because there's not a parked car that's blocking their view of people who are currently in the intersection or crossing the street. So one thing that we could do is say kind of number of scooter and bike corrals installed as daylighting infrastructure. What do folks think about that?
Hadn't thought about it, but that sounds, yeah, sounds like something that we would be interested in.
I liked it because it seemed like it was like kind of a 2-for-1. So
Mhm.
we can get both little safer pedestrian crossing the street experience.
Mhm.
Then also we could take the scooters off the sidewalk and put them into a corral that's not blocking the sidewalk. That's kind of why I like that idea.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
But maybe what we can do is also keep, but to your point, both Buddy and Adrian, both of you guys mentioned the scooters operating on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
I've been thinking a little bit about this. I can't come up with a good metric, but maybe we can all keep thinking about it
Mhm.
for next month.
Mhm. Okay.
I mean, did they ever have any update on like if they're going to start enforcing any kind of like tickets or anything like that? I mean, that could be one way to keep track of like once if they ever do start enforcing, saying that you can't have scooters on the sidewalks or whatever. You know, if they start, getting tickets, I guess you could track the violations. But outside that, I can't really think of any ways like you could just figure out how to. I mean, because it's just so random. That'd be like trying to track who walks, whatever.
Yeah.
It'd be impossible just to like track, that. I, I mean, unless you maybe find out how many people own them. But again, you wouldn't. I mean, just because they own them doesn't mean they necessarily use them. It'd be very difficult to figure out how to track.
Oh, you know what? Actually, so what I realized actually just now is so. Aaron said they had the share, at least the shared. These won't be the private ones, unfortunately, but the shared ones. Aaron did say they have the technology, but I'm not sure if it's implemented. We could just ask the scooter companies, "Hey, how many times are scooters being operated on the sidewalk?" If they have that data, then that's something that we could track of like, hey, daily, this is the number of scooter, this is the number of times the scooter was being operated on the sidewalk. But again, to Adrian, your point, it's like not the private, it wouldn't include private ones. It's only the kind of the shared fleet, like the Lime and Bird and stuff.
And then it would also be hard to track, like, because some people, I mean, I do see some people who do actually use the scooters and bikes and stuff in the lanes, like they're supposed to be, at least on 14th Street where I walk. But then you still have a good number of people who do just fly up and down the sidewalks with them. So some people do use the street, and some people do use the bike lanes, and some people don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the thing that we want to see is 100% of scooters being off of the sidewalk. That's what we want. But the question is, how do we measure that? I'll just put it on here of like number, and we can ask VDOT of like, hey, number of times the scooter companies say a trip is say a trip is on a sidewalk or partially on a sidewalk, or some part of the trip is on a sidewalk. I think it's worth asking and see what we can get back. I've got another one here. There is something, so DC does have what's called sightline statutes. So basically, that when you have, you don't want cars parked right up against a crosswalk, and also you don't want cars parked right up against a intersection, because that will obstruct the view of turning drivers that might end up hitting pedestrians. So DC actually has a law that says that there shouldn't be, I think I might be getting this wrong, but I know I might be getting the number wrong, but I know that this law exists, is that I think it needs to be like within 15 feet of a crosswalk or a intersection, there can't be any parked cars. And I think that's something that we can, that's something that I think would be great to measure, of like percent of intersections and crosswalks that are not in compliance with the DC laws around sightline statutes.
Yeah.
Then let's see what else I have. Yeah, and the kind of same thing here of maybe with a specific focus, that same question with a specific focus on the most dangerous streets. So DC's Vision Zero team has created a network of, or created a map of the most dangerous streets. They call it the Vision Zero High Injury Corridor Network. And this is where we can basically say, okay, like, we really want to make sure that we're following the law for sightline safety laws on these tier 1, 2, and 3 high injury streets. So I think that that could be another thing that would be good to track as well. Then this was Helen's suggestion last time, which I absolutely loved, of the percent of our traffic engineers who have used a wheelchair, a manual wheelchair to traverse an arterial intersection. I think it's worth bringing that up. I loved that idea, and in the same way with a blindfolded and earplug. I think the question is, you know, how do we define traffic engineers?
Yeah.
One thing that Nana brought up is, you know, how do we accommodate for folks that have some sort of accessibility challenge? But I think we can get around. I think we can kind of figure out a way to measure this, because this is something that I think is really important, because you know, especially if folks are coming from out of state and they're spending millions of dollars to change our streets, we really want to make sure that they understand our perspective of folks with visual disabilities and auditory disabilities and mobility challenges in general. Like, I think this is an important one. One thing that I had brought up before, and we got a little bit, I brought up this before we had Dr. Petrosian on to talk about how we're permitting during construction, and kind of that was in response to the man who super sadly got killed on Rhode Island Avenue when they shut down the sidewalk. And I think here a good measure might be the percent of construction permits that close sidewalks, because that's something that we want to make sure of. DDOT says that should be done only in extreme circumstances. I think they call it the last resort circumstance, but my sense is that it actually occurs much more often than that. So I think just having something to track there is important. But yeah, so here would be just the percent of construction permits that close sidewalks. And then this is kind of the one that we suggested in our joint resolution with the BAC and BAC and PAC, is the number of cars with at least $1,000 in moving violations that have not yet been seized. So those are, yeah. So that kind of, like, you know, spans the gamut of the things that we've talked about. So audible walk signals, sidewalks, closing sidewalks during construction, scooters being parked and operated outside of the sidewalk, or on the sidewalk, I'm sorry, and then daylighting infrastructure, especially for the high injury network corridors, and then also making sure that our traffic engineers understand the challenges that folks with disabilities have in getting around the district. So those are, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, Karthik, if I have a question, and I'm not sure whether Zach or someone can answer the question. With the curb cuts, and I use curb cuts all the time. I never use the curb because with my poor vision, I never know the height of a curb. So I'll go to the end of a block to find a curb cut to cross the street. Now, there's some curb cuts that are smooth. Then there are others who have like bubbles.
Yep.
Now, what's the difference, and is one better than the other? Why do we have some with and others without? Can someone sort of clarify that?
Yeah, that's actually might be a good Zach question. Zach, do you happen to know the answer to that question? I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know the answer to that either. I will say that when we look at curb cuts and making them more compliant, the sort of bubbles and the grade of those curb cuts are what we make improvements on. That is something that we keep in our ADA transition plan.
Okay.
I don't know if it gets that granular into which ones do and which ones don't, but that's possibly something we could track too.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great because I use both, and again, I'm not sure. For me, the ones with the bumps are better because then I know that I'm in a curb cut. Otherwise, if it's smooth like the sidewalk or the street, I really wouldn't know when I'm leaving the curb cut and entering the street. Right? So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually like that is something that I think we can investigate. We can just kind of understand, hey, like when is it smooth and when is it?
Yes.
When is it? Yeah. So maybe, can we look into that, Zach, for the next time? Of maybe like, is there someone who like knows the ADA guidance on that?
Yeah, we can look into it.
Great.
Nice. And then one thing that I've mentioned to Zach is that, you know, next time we can kind of go in detail with DDOT about, hey, like these are some of the ones that we care about. Like now, how do we adjust these so that we can prioritize these in terms of like, okay, these are the things that we really care about, and then kind of these are things that are going to be hard to get. These are things that are going to be easy to get, so we can kind of prioritize that with DDOT. Ideally, that's next. We can do that next time. But then, yeah, maybe we can also talk a little bit about kind of generally like what accessibility, how DDOT sees accessibility in the district too. We can talk more about that.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah. So those are my. Those were. Oh yeah, and then the number of stop work orders, that are the number of stop work orders that are issued for safe accommodations violations. That's something that I think it was Chair Collins or Chief Collins said that's something that they can do, and that's a tool that they have in their toolbox. So yeah, so I think those are the metrics that I've got. Does anyone else have any other thoughts about other metrics that they'd like to see tracked?
Think anything, but like I said, I think one of the ways that, I don't know, the only way, like I said, with regards to like the scooters on the sidewalk, the only way I could think to track it, like, is like I said, if there ever became like a sort of enforcement to make sure that people like giving people tickets or something like that, and like you would be able to like track those tickets and say, you know, this is how many violations we had this quarter, or month, or quarter, or a year, or 6 months, or however you want to do it. But outside that, like you said, unless maybe you could track some of the scooters.
Yep.
But then even then, like I said, some people actually do drive them on the outside the sidewalks, and then some people drive them on the sidewalks. And Then also you would also have to take into account, like you said, you wouldn't be able to count the black ones because I think I see more of the black ones than I do the white green ones.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think that will, unfortunately, like that will probably more and more folks will get that. This is I mean, let's ask about the green ones. I wonder. Yeah, let's ask about the green ones and the private, but yeah, and then maybe we can just keep thinking about the like how to measure the private ones. But yeah, maybe that's a good one. It's just like, you know, number of times. I guess the only problem with that is that that DDOT actually doesn't do the enforcement of moving scooters. I don't think. I think that. But we can ask. We can ask though. Number of times scooters. Number of kind of violations issued or citations issued to people who are operating scooters on the sidewalk. So I'll put it down and then we can I'll send it to DDOT and maybe we can talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah, great. What else? Anything else?
Sounds good to me.
Adrian or anyone else? Anyone else with
Well, I know they did the comments a couple months ago about like, you know, trying to enforce, you know, people not riding scooters on the sidewalk. Did they ever make any policy or, you know, gave any comments or responses to the comments, or, you know, where is that at in the process?
Yeah, so I think so. What they said was it wasn't in this year's. It wasn't, the restrictions weren't in this year's permit process for the scooter companies, but it is something that he told us actually is like, hey, like they have the technology. This is something that they could do of like actually make it so that the scooters cannot operate on the sidewalk, or they're rate limited to something very slow, like 5 miles an hour on the sidewalk, or 4 with something really small. And so I thought that was really cool, but it's not clear when that rebid is. I think it might be after 2 years or 1, 2, 3, or 3 years. I know that they mentioned that when they just did the rebid last year, it was either last year or the beginning of this year, it wasn't included, which is a bummer. But it is something that they said, hey, you should like advocate for this to be included the next round, which I thought was a great idea.
Okay.
Right. I'll just add to that scooters are restricted from the central business district on sidewalks, but nowhere else. And that is definitely a legislative function.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, I remember we had made the comments to the council and the public comments and all those things. So I was wondering, like, if they ever give any kind of responses to making any kind of legislation to enforce, you know, people not being on the sidewalks.
Yeah.
I don't see how else you're going to stop people personally. I don't know what else you can do. I mean, I guess you could like try to limit it, but like I said, those black ones are the ones that I see. And not only are they the main ones that I see, they go like twice as fast as the green ones.
Yeah. I wonder, I mean, this is my thought. Like, I wonder if there are ways that we can, or at least I think we kind of are shooting ourselves in the foot with the pilot. So like scooters, I think are limited to 10 miles an hour, which is almost the worst of both worlds, because, or at least the shared ones. It's the worst of both worlds because they're way too fast for a sidewalk. You don't like 10 miles an hour is like basically someone sprinting. You don't want someone going 10 miles an hour on the sidewalk, but then at the same time, they're too slow for the road.
That's right.
And if they feel like they're too slow for the road, then they'll be on the sidewalk and then terrorize people on the sidewalk.
That's right. Yeah. You know, it's a dilemma that I'm sure DDOT has wrestled with, because you're right, Karthik. It's too slow in the street and too fast on the sidewalk.
I mean, in my mind, I never know why people needed them. Like I came here in 2008 for law school, and for several years I never seen a scooter at all. I mean, the only people I seen that had them were like the Domino's delivery drivers.
No. Well,
I'm
no.
dating myself because I remember. I mean, but like they're the only people back then when I got to the city that I seen riding any kind of scooters or bikes or anything.
No.
Well, the
Well,
bikes, I seen people on bikes, but the
uh,
actual motor scooters, the only people I ever seen on those were the people delivering pizzas. I didn't see people on them. It's only
well,
been recently that I've seen people like
yeah.
people just like we were just, and they look like they're healthy people. I'm like, you don't look like you're crippled or you need like help. I mean, it's just like you're just using it for fun.
Well, no, but you know, there are people, and I just realized this not too long ago. There are business people, businessmen, I don't know about women, but they will rent those scooters, drive them to work, and then drop them off and take them back home. No, I think it's a great tool, but you have to figure out the most effective way they can be used to protect those around them. That
See,
to
I
me,
mean, I
that's the
think
issue.
that's the dilemma to me. So like,
Yeah.
if they like to me, it's a luxury to people. Like it's something that could be beneficial to you, but you don't need it. You got buses, you got a metro, you don't need those things. But at the same, so in my mind, I'm like, okay, if you want to have scooters, then and you want people to, and the city wants people to be able to enjoy them, the before I always felt like before you make something like that legal and for mass people to use it, you need to have something prepared for it so the people are safe. So if you want people to use the things and you want to allow them to be used before you make them illegal, be proactive and say, well, what can we do if we want to legalize these things and let people to use them? What can we do to make sure that it's safe for the people using them and the people on the sidewalk? Because right now it's just kind of like the Wild West. They just do whatever they want to do, and nobody's really doing anything to enforce anything. And people aren't going to enforce themselves. As a lawyer, I can tell you
that. Yeah, that's for sure true. Yeah, I think like I think the thing that has the best hope, at least in my opinion, is making it so that they don't want to use the sidewalk. So, and my sense is that people are on the sidewalk because they don't feel safe on the road.
Yeah.
So if we can get them give them like a part of the road says like, okay, this is where you operate the scooter. Maybe that's a bike lane, maybe that's some other lane, whatever. But just something that gets them off the sidewalk and makes it more pleasant, because my guess is that they don't want to be like zigging and zagging around people. They just want to go straight.
That's right.
But at the same time, I'm like, but I think, to Adrian's point, it's like, it's the people that don't care about anyone are the ones that I'm afraid of, because they're the ones that are just like, whatever, I'm just going to go, 20 miles an hour speeding down the sidewalk and terrorize people. Like those are the people that I'm afraid of too. So, so how do we like really move those people away? So, so I think those are, I think we've got a good list.
Yes.
Unless, so, but if either, Buddy, Adrian, or anyone else, like, is there anything else that folks wanted to put on here? Any other things that we should start measuring?
Not from my point of view, but before we leave, Karthik, I would like to thank you for your testimony before the City Council. Very enlightening testimony, and I really appreciate the fact that you came on and did that service.
No, I mean, I appreciate this forum. I think, like, this is, folks have, I think it's neat that DC has this place where, folks with disabilities can kind of specifically highlight their concern, and it's awesome that that you, Buddy, and Adrian, and folks who are here come engage with the process. So I really it's awesome, and I think we can continue to advocate and use this forum to advocate for making the district better. So yeah. Cool. Nice. And then kind of the last, so outside of these metrics, the last thing that I wanted to mention was we have MAACBC.org back up and running. It hasn't been updated at all yet. So that was actually one thing. Bushira, are you on?
Yes, I am. Hi, everyone.
Cool. So that's actually, and we can set up a separate time, but it's something that I would be awesome to get your help on, of like of taking MAACDC.org, and I have the HubSpot access behind it, and just updating it with kind of with our meeting minutes and the meeting minutes and resolutions and the new bios and kind of other things of interest. That would be great. We can make a separate meeting to talk about it, but I just wanted to kind of mention that if you're up for it.
Great.
Well, sounds good.
Cool. Okay, nice. Is there anything else? Any other things that folks wanted to talk about? We're, I think, without a guest this time, so I think we can end much earlier.
Okay.
Not that I can think of.
Same here. I think we've covered quite a bit.
Cool. Okay, great. Well then, I'll send this stuff off to DDOT, and then on the July meeting, we'll plan on hopefully having the ATE task force present, and then also we can discuss these metrics with DDOT, and we can go from there.
Okay.
Thank you. See you guys.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you all.
Have a good night.
All right.
Have a good night.